everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Successful Women's TV show. My name is Galit Ventura-Rozen, and I am co-founder of Everyday Woman TV and a professional speaker. As you know, one of my favorite things to do every week is to spotlight women that are doing amazing things in the world. Today, I am very excited to have with me Shavannah. Welcome.
Hi, Galit. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
So tell us where you're joining us from.
I am in North Carolina.
Beautiful. What part?
Raleigh.
So I am dying to plan a trip soon just to drive through the Carolinas. I haven't done that since I was 18. And my fiance's family is from North Carolina. So he's a Southern boy, which you would love.
Yes, so, come on down.
I will. I'm going to get there. It's on my bucket list probably in the next year or two I want to get in the car and drive through the states because I think that's the only way to enjoy them.
Yes, for sure.
So let's go ahead and jump in, share a little bit about you, and then also jump into the topic, which I'm really excited that we're going to be talking about. I think it's so important for people to know, and I know you're an expert in this area. So the topic we're going to be talking about today is the 5-step process to turn your story to cash. Who doesn't want to do that? Hello, right? It's so smart to do that. And I'm sharing a little bit about Shavannah. Shavannah Moore is a storytelling strategist and life coach, which obviously that's why we're going to talk about storytelling. She's a portrait of resilience and grace. She's also so much fun to watch on social media. We connected online. This is our first time meeting virtually, except from just supporting each other, not even knowing each other. We're constantly cheering each other on online, which is so much fun. And she's an executive producer. We'll have to share about a little bit about that today. Her goal is to empower women and leaders to become all that they desire to be. As a woman who has experienced many hardships in life, including but not limited to poverty, molestation, and depression, Shavannah has not allowed these obstacles to hold her back. Have you seen her energy? Instead, she has used them as catalysts to push herself forward, which you really signify and show that every single day. But I also love that you're real and you show the real part of you as well. So let's jump right in. Tell us a little bit about how you got into this expertise of storytelling and why you believe and are so passionate it's so important.
Well, Galit, thank you so much, first of all, for that amazing introduction. Anytime someone introduces me, I'm like, is that me?
Like, right?
I think we get
it's you.
And we forget just how far we have come, right? So for me, I truly believe that when we share our stories and let our voices be heard, we give other people permission to let their voices be heard. So I know we don't have a lot of time, but I guess the gist of my background going through, I think, as you mentioned earlier, just really going through depression, suicidal thoughts, getting laid off from my corporate job about 8 or 9 years ago, and just really jumping headfirst into entrepreneurship. I feel like I experienced so much because I did not have the, at the time, I didn't have the education, I didn't have the expertise, I didn't have any of those things. So what I ended up doing is I wrote a book back in 2013. Someone asked me to share my story, which for me was ironic because, I was just this little country girl. I had dropped out of high school and I was just like, okay, this is my life. That's what I was told that I was going to be. So I was like, well, who wants to hear my story? Who am I? Right. So I literally jumped in, I shared my story, and I feel like it was at that moment that my healing process began. But more importantly, it's almost like it opened up a whole nother level of consciousness for me to understand that my voice did matter and that I could share my story and that people would listen, and then I could share my story to impact the lives of others. So once I jumped into entrepreneurship and people kept asking me how I was doing what I was doing, they wanted to hear more about my story, it really began to dawn on me like, wait a minute, I'm onto something here, right? Nobody cares about the fact that I can make money or, I can do this or do that. They cared about me and who I was and my why. And that is where the real impact began for me. So I just got on this personal development journey, learning more about myself. And I started really sharing my story with the masses. And here we are today. So I always tell people, regardless of how much money I make, regardless of how successful I become, my story has literally been the foundation of my success. And that's just my story. Like Les Brown says, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And my favorite part about all of that is the word journey. You kept using, this is my journey. This is my journey. We hear that a lot with heart centered women like you and I, where we never imagined in our lives we would be out in the public. I'm sure you're like that. And I'm going to make an assumption, so correct me if I'm wrong. But we were good. We were working. If it's your own business or having a job, you're getting through your stuff and you're living your best life. And then here comes someone that goes, wow. And you're going, what do you mean? What do you mean? That's
Mhm.
just my journey. Why is it such a big deal? Right? We do this almost like unreal thing of why would somebody be motivated or inspired as you have
Yes.
and done for so many women and men, but so many women.
Yes.
And then you go, wait, my journey, my story can make a difference. Somebody can be impacted to maybe make a different choice than I did, or maybe have an easier experience going through the challenges that I did. And then you go, I'm assuming you go, I got to keep sharing my story and
Yes.
I got to teach other people how to do it. So take me there. Tell me what that was like for you.
So for me, honestly, and it's so interesting because this is how I kind of came up with the concept of this is how you turn your story to cash. Because I realized as an entrepreneur, one of the things that I started to recognize rather was all of the people that I followed that were change makers and that were like really making a really big impact in the world. The
Yeah.
foundation of their success was their story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So although I didn't get into it to be profitable or, to turn it into money, that's essentially what happened because the more impact I made, the more profitable I became. And I started to see a connection and a correlation between the two, and that's how I ended up coming up with the framework that we're going to briefly talk about today. But for me, I feel like that journey literally went from me just having the courage to say, you know what, my voice matters. Once I wrote my story in that book, it's almost like it gave me a certain level of
And tell
height.
me the name of the book.
Oh, I've written 7. So that
Yeah,
first book
but
that
what
I'm
was
talking
that
about,
one
that
book?
one, yeah, that one book was called Chocolate and Diamonds for the Woman's Soul, and
And
it
you've
was
written
about,
7, which is
yep,
amazing. And
it
I'm
was.
sure everyone can find those online.
Yes, for
Perfect.
sure. And that was a compilation of me and women from around the world just literally sharing our stories in an anthology. So that's really where I feel like that started for me as far as being comfortable and gaining that confidence to share my story. And then, of course, throughout the journey, that's when I started to uncover like, wait a minute, there's actually a method to this. Like, there's actually something here because people kept asking me how to do it. And oftentimes I feel like, especially as successful women, we do things so easily, so to speak. It comes with ease when you're in alignment. So you don't really begin to think about, is there really a method to this? Is there a framework? Is there like, what am I doing? I just do it, but naturally. But what am I doing to be able to articulate it to someone else that they can turn around and do the same thing, right? Because like I said earlier, when you let your voice be heard, you give others permission to let their voices be heard. That's
So
where the
well
real
said.
impact begins.
So well said. One of the things that you said that I really want to pinpoint just for a minute is that you didn't anticipate to be profitable, but you are. But I want to really make it a point that that's okay.
It
So
is.
you deserve to get paid. Anybody listening and watching, you deserve to get paid for your expertise. You deserve to get paid for what you are good at, even though we never anticipated it. What
Mm-hmm.
a great way. And you also use the word alignment, which for those listening and watching is there's almost this easy. Shavannah used the word easy. I love the word effortless, where it's not that we don't put in the action or the work. We work our booties off.
Yeah.
It's that it seems like the right path and people want to be a part of it. So take us a little bit through this 5-step process, because I think it's so important for those listening and watching that had the same thoughts as you, that why would someone want to hear my story? Why? It's not important. It's just something that I went through.
Mm. So the first, well, we're going to be using the acronym STORY
Okay.
itself. However, the why is I. It's not a why at the end of this particular framework. So when you walk through the process, the first thing is the S, which is surrender. And what I have found is that a lot of the times on this entrepreneurial journey, we are doing things that we either went to school for, that our parents told us we should do, our pastors, our friend was like, oh, you're really good at this. So we find ourselves walking down this journey and this path that's not really in alignment with who our soul came here to be. And for me, it was like I started off following my passion in life. That's when I jumped into entrepreneurship. However, I did not recognize the entire time that my purpose was so much bigger than that. My
Mm.
purpose was so much bigger than what I like to do or what I thought I was supposed to be doing at the time. I just feel like me following my passion led me to my purpose in life. So I had to surrender to who I thought my soul came to be and who I actually am here to be, the purpose that I'm actually here to make in this world. So the first step in that is you have to surrender to who the idea of who you thought you were here to be, because a lot of the times, like I said, we are traveling a journey that is not really our journey. And that's when how you know you're not on that right journey, like you mentioned earlier, alignment. If it doesn't come to you effortlessly, if it doesn't come to you with ease, and essentially, then more than likely there's something that your inner being or your soul or your spirit guide is trying to tell you that's not taking you in the right direction of where you're supposed to be going. So pay attention to those things. Pay attention to, the synchronicities that you get, the things that happen in your life, the things that irritate you about, the world, because oftentimes those are ways that I feel that your higher being, or the 2.0 version, as I like to call it, of yourself is trying to tell you and lead you down a path that you're more than willing not going. You're not going to just go because it doesn't look like what you were told you should be doing. So
yeah, and I want to intervene and just share that it doesn't mean that there might not be some resistance, because I've also found, Shavannah, that when I'm just about to up level, some kind of challenge shows up and it's like a test. Hey, can you get through this before we take you to the next level? So I completely agree with you that if it's just not attracting people, or it's not something that's of interest, or it just doesn't make any sense, let's figure out what does. But I've also learned that it never fails. Right before I'm about to up level or something new I'm supposed to do, something happens and I have to be like, oh, heck no, I'm not letting this happen. You are not getting in my way. And I just kind of trample it with my feet, if I was a little bit visual for you. So, okay, so we've got the yes. What do we got?
And that's normally fear, which is another indication that that's the route you should be going.
I know, right?
Yeah. So when I say things are not aligned, that means you're like hustling really hard and you just can't get it together. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm about to pull my hair out. Something's not right. Then that's not alignment. I always tell my clients, if you're overthinking something, or if you are like hustling really hard and nothing's happening, then more than likely that's your soul trying to tell you that's not the correct path for you. So it's time to just kind of revert back to who it is that you're truly called here to be. And in order to do that, you have to be still and surrender to your higher self. There's just really no other way around it. So
there isn't.
That's normally like the indication that it's time for you to continue to move forward, because you are going to feel fear, but fear and alignment are two totally different things. So
totally different, and you can establish that
anyway.
Yeah, and there's a difference. You'll know the difference because you'll start questioning it versus, oh my gosh, someone just called and wants me to speak on stage and they want to pay me. I'm freaking out. Versus, why is nobody getting back to me, but I'm putting in the work? So I completely agree with the difference between that. All right, so we got our S. What's next?
So the T is for transformation. So this is essentially where you have your transformation. Like, you went through your story, you went through your challenges. Now, how are you going to take other people through that? So this is where I typically have people create like a transformational offer, speech, or one-on-one service, or some type of transformation, because we have to remember your story is not about you. It never was about you. So although you went through that transformation, how can you now help and guide other people through the transformation that you went through. And that's essentially where your transformational service offer or speech kicks in. So that is where you actually creating that process, creating your blueprint, creating your framework that you can walk other people through to get them results. But in return, obviously you get paid for it, because that's your transformational offer. The O is for owning your story. And I mean, like, really owning your story. A lot of people tell their sugarcoat their story, or
Oh,
they
I
want to
love
tell the
that. That's
surface
so
line.
true.
They
Yeah.
want to they want to tell like the surface line story, right? But they don't really get to the meat of
Or the
the
emotion,
real
right?
story. Exactly. So take me for example, when I started sharing my story, I was so bored, like, oh well, I was laid off from my job, and I told the surface level story, but it wasn't until I went deep and I really talked about the depression, I really talked about the suicide, that I feel like that's where the impact began. Because the part that I didn't want to go to was the part that made the biggest impact. And I always encourage people, when you begin sharing your story, go to those places that you don't want to go to those places that people don't really know about you, because for me, that's where the real impact begins. So you have to be able to own your story in this process. The R is simply for results. That is where you are showing the world, hey, this is my story, this is what I went through, but what was the result of what you went through, right? Because
Right.
people want to know, fortunately, the world that we live in, they want to know what you can do for them. Like, how are you going to support me? How are you going to help me? So this is where you start to identify your wins and the things that you were able to accomplish as a result of the things that you went through. Or you can look at it, results from your other clients. Maybe you can leverage your client story. Okay, well, when my clients started working with me, this is where they were, this is the result that they got from going through my transformational offer or going through my service, or whatever it is that you're creating. And then the I is just simply integrate. A lot of the times I feel like we get on stage, we do these webinars, we do all of these coaching calls and all of these things, but we never integrate the process. We just look at all this information and we continue to collect knowledge and we don't integrate the process. And on this personal development journey, if you're not integrating, even if it's just 1% of what you're learning every single day, then it's like, why are you doing it? Right? It's no
So
point
why do
to
you
read
think
all of
people
these.
don't? Shavannah, why do you think people don't? Because I find that's where people get stuck the
Yep.
most, right before the I. Why do you think people don't? I want to hear your thoughts.
I believe that a lot of people don't. It could be several reasons, but what I would say from what I've seen and the people that I work with, fear is number one.
Agreed.
And then two, the shiny eye syndrome, because everything looks
Mm,
good. They see something online and someone says, hey, I'm going to show you how to make six figures. So they jump on that. Then they see something 2 days later where someone says, hey, I'm going to show you how to make seven figures. So before they can even integrate what they learned in the first webinar, they're so quick to jump over here because why? It looks good. It looks appealing to the eye. And now people have gotten so smart in their messaging that they know exactly how to connect to your soul. So for someone who has that shiny eye syndrome, they are just jumping around and they have millions of dollars in notebooks of information that they've collected, but they haven't gone and actually integrated any
yes.
of those processes to be actually
I
become
have
the next
experienced
person.
that with so many clients
Yeah,
that they just go
I
from
have
one
been that
program
person.
to another. Yeah, they go from one program to another. And instead of stopping, oh, Galit, well, I'm learning this right now and I'm not done learning it. And I know that you and I are the kind of ladies that we learn one thing and then we implement. We learn another thing and then we implement. And one of the things I've also noticed, aside from fear, Shavannah, is perfection. People keep waiting
Mm,
for perfect.
that's
And
a good
I've
one.
learned that, well, it's not perfect. My website's not perfect. My talk is not perfect. My story is not, I hate that word. And I don't say hate very often in my
Yeah,
world, very rare.
yeah.
So, how do we help them pass the fear and the perfection?
My I would encourage anyone that is watching today and that you feel like that's your issue or your problem. I want you to really start to look at your life from a different perspective,
Okay.
because what I want you to ask yourself is, if has what I've been doing working for me? And if it's not working for me, then it's time for you to, if it's not working for you, rather, then it's time to shift and do something different. And I think for me, that's where I had to realize, okay, I feel like I'm doing this over and over again. I feel like I'm going around this hamster wheel and nothing's happening. So I had to really going back to surrender, right?
Yeah.
Take a step back, get still, be quiet. Some of my favorite things to do is sit in nature like I'm doing today, meditate, get in a really quiet space so that you can surrender to what it is that you're supposed to be doing on this next level, and then continue to ask yourself, is what I'm doing or what I have been doing, is that working for me? Is jumping around from course to course working for me? If it's not, then take a break, stop, and start to integrate what it is that you have learned in the last course or from the last coach. And even if you do one thing, if someone teaches you, okay, well, here's a 3-step process to do something, do that first step tomorrow and just do something every single day towards your goal, even if it's something small. It doesn't have to be something massive, but just take that one step in every single day that's going to push you closer and closer to your goals. So just 1% of what you're learning, integrate that, not the whole 90%,
Just
not the
do
whole
it.
100. Just
That's
one.
one of my favorite slogans. I'm
Just
like,
do
I'm
it.
not trying to steal it from Nike, but just do it. Stop talking about it. Do it.
Just do it.
I
Even if it's
love
just 1%.
one thing. One thing.
One
I
thing.
always say 5 minutes a day already is 5 minutes more than you did
That's it.
yesterday.
Exactly.
I
So that's what I would
love
encourage them to do.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I think that that acronym is so strong. STORI. Definitely, ladies, watch this again. Write down those letters, write down what each one means. Even just taking this value alone, aside from reaching out to Shavannah and learning about her programs and learning how I'm going to just assume you pull that dang story out of these ladies. But I think that that's such an important piece because we each have a story, and we for ourselves never think it's something someone wants to hear, and then they hear it and their eyes go, oh my gosh. And then, like you said, wait, if I share my story, I connect with people. When I share my story, I teach other people how to share their story, and look what it's done for you. I love that. Will you share with everybody how they can get a hold of you, how they can learn more about working with you, about the different things that you're doing to help other people find their story?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm literally on all social media sites at Shavannah Speaks More. So if you ever need to contact me, that's how you can find me. I have a very unique name, so I'm the only one in the world. So it's not going to be
Love
hard to
it.
find me. And there are several levels that I work with people under as far as helping them utilize their stories. So I have obviously my coaching programs, but more importantly, if it's on a more personal level, then I do story intensives. So there's several ways that we can get you to your result. And I just want to say that when you begin sharing your story, like Galit said earlier, just do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. My story still isn't perfect, but the point that I have the courage to show up anyway is what makes all the difference. That's where the impact, because nobody expects to see a perfect person all the time. I'm not perfect, and neither is my story. But the fact that I have the courage to show up is where the real impact begins. So just do it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just start somewhere.
I love it. And one of my favorite phrases is I'm a work in progress, and I plan on being,
Always.
because if I already figured it out, I would never learn. And I love learning every single day. And some of the things I learned, Shavannah, I'm never going to use because oh no, I would never use that. It's not all learning you're going to implement, but just learn, guys. Stop saying you don't know how. Like, stop saying you don't know how. There's somebody out there that knows how to do the things that you don't know how to do. Shavannah is an expert in areas that you may not know. And especially when you're working on your own story, it's like almost being your own therapist.
Yeah.
You can't be your own therapist.
Yeah.
You can't see for yourself what somebody else can see.
Yeah.
So I love that you shared that. And thank you for being here. Thank you so much for being part of my network online, for being one of those women that I've never met until today virtually, but we just support each other and want to cheer each other on, and are so excited for your success, so excited for everything that you're doing, and so excited for how far you've come. I know you're just starting, but thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. We could talk about this all day.
I
So
know we could. We
thank you
will. We
so
will.
much.
We'll have you on again for sure. But everybody watching and listening, thank you so much for being a part of the Successful Women's TV show, being a part of Everyday Women TV. And thank you. And I will see you next time. Bye.